exploring the experience of confusion, perhaps confusion from a sense of inner guidance that go this way and you start to move this way and then you start to move this way. I'm not sure if you've ever had that sense that when you open up to an intuitive sense of guidance, that you start moving this way, and what happens and what I notice in myself is that I might, for example, have an impulse to move, like let's go and do this, and I have an image in my mind, and the image is always something I'm familiar with. So I might have the image to go and buy orange juice at Whole Foods. I understand that image. Or the image to get up and make poached eggs for breakfast. Again, I understand the image. And I'm happy with it. So I set myself in motion. On the way up the stairs, I get a new image that's a little bit harder for me to relate to, but that is sparked by the first image. As I walk into the office to start acting on that idea, I have a new thought. Now, this thought is something I've never thought before, and I pivot again towards that. And so the first thing that I see in this pattern of intuition that's fairly solid, meaning something that I understand and I'm motivated by, because getting out of bed, as in this example, I've just gotten out of bed, requires a certain amount of certainty. It's easy if you've got appointments at work, etc., that's certain. But if you're just in a free zone, as I often am, with 0 appointments in the next week because I've left the door open to write, etc., then the impetus to take action is a little bit more fluid, and it requires something clear, something that I can say yes to. So I might begin with, as I say, let's go get some orange juice, or let's make poached eggs. Yes, I'm clear on that. But as I start moving, as I get the blood flowing, etc., new ideas come in that can now be carried on that sail, very much like a sailboat that needs a good headwind to get moving, but you can start tacking. Once you start moving and get up a little bit of a steam, you can start tacking against the wind. And it's this phenomena that I want to explore on a mathematical level when it comes to intuition, guidance, paradox, confusion, and one of those confusions being the impulse to move off in this direction, which then, as we start moving, moves over to here, then back over here, and the obvious question to a lineal, rational, Western-trained mind, those being our limitations, is if that was right, then this can't be right, or what happened to that thing here? Or sometimes I'm driving and getting to a crossroads and I'm thinking, I could go out to the bay, or I could have lunch here, or I could go shopping in the opposite direction, and I listen, I open up, like, well, I don't really care that much. Where's the joy? Where's the energy? And like, well, it's heading down this street, so I head down this street. Maybe get 200 yards and head back. No, this doesn't feel quite right, so I turn around, head back the other way. Maybe get a mile and I'm not getting that feeling anyway, so I turn around again, or where is the new place? And so there's And what's being accessed here is spatial areas of the brain, is different areas within the psyche. If we can look at every action, every thought, every intention as a touch-tone phone. And with a touch-tone phone, it's not just which numbers you press, it's which numbers you press in which sequence. So if you press 1, and then press 3, and then press 1 again, that's 1, 3, 1, which is different than if you just press 1, 1, 1. If you press 1, 1, 1, it's a different vibe than if you press 1, 3, 1. Now they're both, you end up with 1, but you've gotten there in a different way. You will call a different person inside and out if you press, if you just stick on the number and say, I said it was 1, so what's all these distractions? I'm going to stick with 1, and because that's the way to do it, and you should follow through Western lineal thought, I'm going to just press 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and see who answers the phone with that, as opposed to I'm going to press a 1. Okay, now we're going the opposite direction over here. 3, now we're going to 5, now we're going to 8, up, back to 1. So the reason this is of interest to me is that this actually, this energy of uncertainty, heading this way, going this way, is actually part of the dialing process. Meaning once uncertainty and or humility is induced in the behavior, it is also induced in the brain. Because the way I like to work, the way my Western brain likes to work with its super god of efficiency, for example, this is a super god in Western culture. Be efficient. So having decided, make up your mind. Okay, you're going to get orange juice or you're not going to get orange juice. Okay, get orange juice. Well, don't get distracted from the goal of getting orange juice. Get orange juice. And it's rather bizarre because you have to look at it objectively and say, what's the big deal about orange juice? What's the big deal about making sure we have broccoli for dinner? This is not a big deal. So the super obsession with lineality and rationality, when you see its dominance and its obsession in these most idiosyncratic of areas, orange juice, broccoli, go out to the lake, you kind of see that it doesn't have its own merit. That having a new idea, seeing things in a new way, having a new feeling is actually much more important in terms of the impact it has on our life than whether or not we end up getting orange juice or broccoli or going to look at this bay, for a view, or taking a hike here rather than here. So you can't say that this is a life-changing event. But what is a life-changing event is the state of consciousness and the impulses and emotions when one enters the flow of uncertainty, which is entering the flow of the unknown. Because when you replicate that on the outer level, in the outer world, you are now in one of the most potent arenas for an inventor, for change in one's life, etc. When you are in that arena in which could be this, and something entirely new emerges out of the paradox, out of the tension of, is it this, is it that, is it this? Maybe it's neither. And there's an opening. See, this is an interesting terrain, a powerful terrain within our psyche, and the question is, how do we access it? And this is one of the ways that we access it, is intuition, flow, openness. Now, to do this responsibly is not to do it on the way to an important contract signing meeting. That's not when you want the idea. That's when you want to arrive on time. The time to do this is when it's going out to the bay or getting orange juice, when it's roll over on my right side or the left side, or make this sound or make that sound. I've been playing around a lot with the implications of the Johns Hopkins study on psilocybin, which is that to really access synesthesia within the brain, you want to repress the default mode system within the brain, which keeps everything going exactly as it went before. And it's a surprising study that mushrooms, psilocybin, doesn't bring new blood into the brain and activate the brain. Rather, it suppresses the status quo within the brain. And once the status quo is suppressed, whatever that status quo is, the default mode, new growth and connections and experiences start to emerge because the God at the top of the power triangle has been befuddled for a few hours. So it's kind of like the teacher leaves the room and suddenly you have an explosion of creativity. There's spitballs and airplanes and notes and games and noises and stuff, and the teacher comes back and is like, oh, everyone back in the rows, everyone back in your chairs, everyone back making these sounds, everyone doing this. It's the default mode. So to have massive amounts of energy and creativity, etc., you've got to suppress the default mode. Well, the ego doesn't just leave the room and leave you free to create and stuff. So psilocybin suppresses and befuddles the default mode long enough for the kids to come out, for the dance to begin. And the power is not in its superiority. The power is in the diversity. You have 1,000 days that are all regimented in the status quo, and you need to make some changes in your life for evolutionary purposes. Your life could be better. You could be feeling better. You could be making more money. You could be having a better relationship trajectory. But it's not happening, and it's not going to happen when you do the same thing that you've always done before. You want something out of the default mode. But when the default mode is sitting with all the power and all the confidence and says, I know how to run things. Look, I ran them for the last 10,000 days. It's always been this way. It'll always be this way. I always win. The dominance of the culture, the dominance of the ego, the dominance of the government. I always win. It's always going to be this way. And you just push it aside for a while. So this is another way of playing with that. And what's important, I think, to understand is that the conscious mind, i.e. the default mode consciousness, which is sculpted by culture, is never sophisticated enough to relate to the circle. The sphere, or perhaps the torus, is the most complex and symmetrical, and it's just such an elegant shape. So much grace with a sphere. It just takes so little energy to roll a ball. But a sphere, when you refract a sphere, is infinite numbers of angles and planes on all levels. I mean, so many lines it takes, so many dots it takes to get a sphere. So our lineal mind thinks in particles. Our artistic mind, our emotional mind thinks in waves, but our lineal mind, our left brain, thinks in lines, in particles, in distinctions, this or this. The trouble is We have a hard time remembering a telephone number that's more than 10 digits. We don't have the software, and the amount of rote memorization that we stuff into kids' heads is so thick. We can't remember 1,000, let alone 1,000,000 different planes. And so when guidance pulls us this way towards plane 397,001, we don't see 397,000 options and one. We don't see the rest of the million options. We get this pull, and what we do is we refract, as the psyche is a symmetrical thing. When we're leaning way off here, the psyche is pulling us over here to balance, moving us towards grace. The spherical shape is a graceful shape because it's symmetrical. And with symmetrical comes ease. Car tires would not get 50 miles per gallon for the super gas efficient cars if the wheels were angular. They get that mileage because a wheel is graceful. And so our instinct, our psyche, our sense of guidance is pulling us towards grace, pulling us towards symmetry. In a culture that is very dysfunctional, in a culture that is very asymmetrical, in a culture that's much more like a watermelon where it's clunking along, it's not a sphere. Now, when our intuition, when a sense of grace and guidance intersects with the rather rigid and crude distinctions of our culture, we get pulled off in this direction and we rack our brains because we don't like uncertainty. Part of the dominating principle of the Western mind, etc., is it likes to feel like it knows everything. It feels safer staying in known terrain. So the psyche pulls it off over here, sends out a little thing, something over here, something over here. And we immediately try and figure out what we know that's in that vague direction. So we get the beacon. We don't like uncertainty. And while there's millions of things over here, what we do is we reduce this call down to something very small, safe, and familiar, like orange juice. It's like, oh, that's what my guidance, that's what the universe, that's what whatever. It's, I need some orange juice. And we get a yes, like, yes, let's go do that, because it's heading in the right direction. But on the way to the orange juice, say it's in this neighborhood right here, on the way to the orange juice, we kind of arrive and it's not it. It's not the orange juice. It's over here. It's like, what's over there? It's over here. It's outside your frame. It's outside. We have the paradigm. And we have dimensions. And we have distinctions. It's over here. It's so frustrating for the ego. Where is it? Is it orange juice or is it not orange juice? It's neither. It's in that general direction. Start moving over here. Well, this is very, very upsetting for the paranoid lineal ego. Because, first of all, we don't teach any of this in school. Big mistake, but we don't. So we confuse an entire population who generally are so discomforted by this whole process of complexity. What's he talking about? What's all this? That they just block it out. That's just intuition. Now, don't go there. I've been down that road where I thought it was, to call that woman. No, it wasn't to call that woman, but that woman had something to do with your soul. There was some part of the feminine that you saw, and it wasn't even there, but you projected it in her eyes, and that bit you needed to go towards. And because you're so dense, You thought it was that woman. No, that woman is just the best representation in your limited imagination for how to touch that part of your own soul. What's all that? Do I call it woman or not? Well, it's not going to go very well if you call that woman, but there's a jump-off point. If you start there, like, what could that mean? If you start pulling it apart and piecing it together and, I need to connect more with my vitality. She's got some of that, doesn't she? She loves punching me with that vitality, but it's the vitality that I'm moving towards. She's actually got something she's upset about, she has feelings about, and I'm numb. So, okay, that's what I need to move towards. It's not the being punched. It's the vitality. It's the energy. It's over there, or it's over here. We don't have the awareness of just how tiny our imaginations are, our Western brains are, relative to the complexity and totality of the psyche. The infinite dimensional sphere, the infinite of the possibility field, the vast of the probability field, and the complex of the actual field in all the areas that we don't pay attention to. Our senses take in 50% more information than we process in our brain. We're constantly using our default mode and superego to say, that doesn't fit my image, so I'm not going to pay attention to that. This is good, so I'm going to do this. This is, I don't know what that is, and that scares me, so I'm going to pretend that doesn't exist. And, oh, good, you're here. Coffee, I know how to deal with that. Let's focus on you. And what are you doing? Well, I'm eating a piece of coffee. But you're also ignoring a moth. But you're also busily deflecting from your fear. Well, I don't like that as part of my image, so I'm drinking a cup of coffee. So you focus in on the thing you're comfortable with. So this is a framework for exploring and understanding that terrain. We have the infinite refractions of the spherical possibility field, the psyche. We have the paradigm through which we look. In some paradigms, intuition doesn't even exist. In some paradigms, rationalists, reductionalists, capitalists, materialists, scientists, it's only, did it make money, did it not make money? It's a very simple, comfortable framework. In other frameworks, everything that you could possibly imagine exists. But that's in a paradigm of possibility, of probability. That's in the belief in complexity. The paradigm that says if it could possibly exist, it does, somewhere, in some time, in some place. Everything is included. Well, that's a paradigm that when you face the unknown takes you into a pretty big state of vision. Is it this? Is it that? Is it my shame? Is it my rage? Is it my hurt? Is it my joy? Is it my wonder? Is it the thing that we don't have a vocabulary for? Because within the frame of total experience, words are like holding places. So if this is the word God, and it connects this point in the sphere with this point of the sphere, and it takes us into this general domain of the psyche. The point is, there's a million different distinctions and small refracted lines all along this sphere here. But we can't hold a million distinctions in our conscious mind. Our computing power, our consciousness is not at that point. So we just take a shortcut. We take these 2 points here, and we create a word that spans this area. It's very much like the color rainbow. If we say that this is a color rainbow, and we see every one of the 250 million colors, that's just most of our computer distinction levels. They take the sphere, the infinite sphere, down to 256 million distinctions. If we take the color wheel, And this is all generally in the pink and red range, and we don't want to get into all that fuss. We don't want to say that this is pink 101, this is pink 102, now we're moving into red. It's too complicated, so we zoom out. We just say red. We just pretend that the word, which can cover literally a million different distinctions of red, we just prefer this. We just say it's red. It's close enough. It's that kind of, it's that kind of color. It's a little bit pinkish, reddish. Anyway, it's red. That's enough for me because my brain is so small. And so we have red. We don't have red one. We don't have a word for red 101, red 102, red 0003. We don't have that because we can't think that big. But that doesn't mean reality isn't that big. Reality is vast. And it exponentially expands as we bring consciousness, exponentially expands as we bring distinctions. Meaning, if you and I could expand our consciousness to simultaneously process and digitize 256 million colors, we would be so oversensoried, overstimulated in terms of our limited, all the emotions from this one, that one reminded me of this, and you could literally have intense memories connected with every single shape of every single color, that there was this blade of grass when this happened, and it was complete lucidity, a crystalline mind, a computer, a supercomputer. We could have a brain like that. We don't. So we just call it red. So words are like distinctions. And when we're reaching for a word, it's not this, and we have to combine thousands of different words in such a way to end up in parts of the psyche that someone might be able to have at least their own version of. We have the paradigm through which we look. We have the dimensions. Is it physical red or is it emotional red? Is it physical red or is it emotional red or is it mental red? And what's the intention? Another dimension. What's the belief? Another dimension. What's the is it about this plane in space, another dimension, or this plane, or is it length, width, depth, or what about these other dimensions that are implied in the anomalous data that doesn't quite fit into the scientific theories? Or is it there? I don't know. Which dimension are we talking? Is it orange juice as in the joy of orange, as in the passion of the second chakra, and so go get some orange juice means to open up to my passion? Is the image coming on an emotional dimension in an emotionally illiterate culture, and so rather than getting the sense of orange, we're getting the sense of orange juice, which is how a materialist would experience the emotion of orange. It has, a materialist isn't looking, he's got one eye closed. So orange, what's the orange juice? I like orange juice. Let's get the orange juice. It's not the orange juice, but it's, maybe indirectly you get a little bit of sense of that vitality when you see that bright color, maybe, or no, I'm much too unconscious, just busy worrying about my materialist world. So the dimension. And then we have these distinctions, the distinctions of words. And what I want to just point out is that we have a brain that can grasp that this line here is leaving out this bit here, and that if we wanted to get more specific, we should say, is it this one, is it this one, or is it this one? We can grasp that on a geometrical level. We can't often grasp that on a thought level because we were trained in school to mimic, not to explore the dimensionality of the self. We are told that it's this way, it's not that way, that this happened and the history was like this and not like this. We are taught this either or thinking. But you can see that if you cannot grasp this one, and this one, they're all going to fall within this line. But there's quite a lot of range in that line. And so a lot of what happens is, going back to this 1-3-1 kind of thing, is, let's say the pull to your guidance is towards this panel right here, because you've been overloading this area here, and the psyche's always moving towards balance. It's always moving back towards grace. You know, that's the circle, etc. The earth works in circles naturally. It moves towards symmetry and grace. That's what we see. So if you've been forced to, do 8 hours of homework, 8 hours of homework, 8 hours of homework, you're getting way out of balance. Your head is exploding with stuff you can't even remember and that is completely meaningless. Meanwhile, your heart is shriveled. Meanwhile, your body is getting sick with all this cramming and stuff. So your psyche is going to pull you over here. Ice cream cone, laughing in the park, playing with the dog, and you say, no, we've got to cram and do this stuff, and pulling over here and pulling over here. It's moving you towards balance and grace. But if you lack the distinction, maybe you head over to here, and it's like, no, that's not quite right. And so you think, well, maybe I shouldn't have left my work. I should have done this. And then it's like, you go back this way. It's like, no, there is something over here, and you head over to this point in the line, and it's like, oh, it's a little warmer. But this isn't it. And then you kind of stumble across the line into something that you lacked the imagination to perceive. And so, personally, I roll with it. Got an open day, the next 48 hours, I do not have to be anywhere. And what I find as I do a U-turn and drive back this way, and then an idea, an emotion that would not have entered the framed pattern of my brain, the predestined, I knew what I was going to think, I knew what my goals were, and I'm going to do them, etc. Now I don't know. I have no idea if I'm going to do a U-turn in the next 10 meters. I don't know. And once I enter that place of not knowing, through the body, being a good materialist, through the body, moving around, something new comes in to my consciousness that changes my life. And the day goes differently than if I'd stuck with the plan. And that's what I see as the power of humility, the power to open up to a system, to an awareness that is bigger than the small computing process of the lineal Western brain. Enjoy exploring.